I have some now. Is there something you want to go back or no one literally saying like good job, Kat. Oh, American. Well, it's because Lars is like, yes, Skylar, and this is nothing for you play. You need to be louder. You're sharp. You were. Okay, let's, we're going to be looking ahead today. In a few days, you've got, well, next week, you've got your first synthesis type assignment due. I know, how sad. All right, so you'll see on Canvas, it's this one, American Dream Synthesis Essay Shortened. It's because you're not writing the full essay for this assignment. You're going to write the first 3 paragraphs. So we've been talking about American Dream. You're going to write a synthesis essay. It says your essay should answer the question, is it possible and or desirable to maintain a society that guarantees every citizen access to the ideal we've been calling the American Dream? If yes, how? If no, why not? I want to expand that. I don't care what your essay is exactly about, as long as it is about something having to do with the American Dream. So anything that you've been sort of interested in, if you've been interested in the wealth gap, if you've been interested in the work ethic question, B-Day has kind of gotten a little short shrifted in terms of our American Dream sources, so we're going to help that out today. If you're interested in economics, or you're interested in, you know, community, or however you want to shape that question, it just needs to be about the American Dream. And I kind of clarify that here, where I say the number one thing I'm looking for is that it is interesting. I have to read, like every year we do this essay, every year I have multiple classes doing it. I have to read a lot of essays about the American Dream. So if you can find an angle that makes your essay interesting, that's amazing. You got to integrate at least 4 sources, and we're going to use the American Dream packet for those sources. And it's different than usual. So you're going to write the first 3 paragraphs, so the intro and then 2 body paragraphs. That will be enough to show me that how you are synthesizing. So that'll be enough for me. And then after that, you'll have an outline. And an outline is just where you give me your topic sentences, a little explanation. It doesn't need to even be grammatically correct, just an explanation of what would go in that section. And then just a list of the sources that you would use. So you don't have to actually integrate them. You're just like, oh, and I would use, you know, I would use the Thomas Jefferson source here, and I would use the Huey Long source here, etc. And then I'll use the AP rubric as usual to grade the first 3 paragraphs, and then you'll get a separate score out of 10 just for doing the outline. And so I can make sure that you have all the parts of it. That's a score that you get just for doing it. All right, so to get us there, I'm going to have you write a thesis and outline today. And I'm going to give you feedback on it. So if you come up here to today's assignment, it says in-class assignment, American Dream, thesis and outline. And it just has the assignment listed again there. And you're going to write a thesis statement. And I'm going to put it into a rubric. So the rubric, you get 1 point for it being grammatically perfect, 1 for it being interesting. That's, I know, subjective, but I'm going to judge based on my subjective experience. Is this interesting or not? 3, is it focused? 4, is it literal? You don't use any metaphors or cliches in the thesis. And 5, is it debatable? Making sure that you are actually giving me a thesis statement that you can prove or disprove, or sorry, that you can prove. So you get 1 point for each of those. So you get 5 points for the thesis. And then for the little outline, I want to make sure that it's divided into sufficient segments, meaning you have enough paragraphs. Like you're not going to write all those paragraphs, right? You're only going to write the first 3, but that in your outline, there are enough that I could see this actually being a good paper. And then if they're in the logical order, so you're showing like how the transitions work. So let me show you an example of somebody who did this before, just so that you can kind of have an idea of what it'll look like. I hope he doesn't mind that I show you, but it was good. So No, it's Rubens.
I thought you said, please tell me this racist. Please let it be racist.
I just love racist ones. Racist thesis.
Racist, that makes so much more sense. It still sounds the same.
Okay, this is just one so you can kind of see how it would look. So here's his thesis. American Dream is not worth celebrating for most people because it is hard to achieve without being lucky or unethical in acquiring income. And then he's broken it down into the points that he's going to make. And he's got little mini points underneath. When I say your outline explains what you'll talk about there, that's what I mean. It's just got some mini points under each major point, subheadings here to show what is going to be discussed. So he has his first paragraph will be why it is celebrated. And it'll be about meeting certain financial goals can make people think being rich is possible. I would take out this part because it feels off topic, but he says, why is it admirable? Because gaining money is something that everybody wants. Improving one's living standards is admirable. That it can be attainable for some people. So he's broken it down into the different sections. So I just wanted to show you this so you could see what the format could look like. A major heading and then some subheadings. Yeah. Yeah, you're writing it as if you're going to write the whole essay so that you're getting the outline part of this assignment done in class. And then you would only write the first 3 paragraphs. So for Ruben, he would only write the intro with his thesis at the end, a paragraph about why it's celebrated, and a paragraph about why it's admirable. Does that make sense? All right. I am going to give you a few minutes to get started on that. No, I want to give you like 15 minutes to actually do it, maybe 20 minutes. And I'm going to try and give you feedback as we go through class today. So the second half of class is going to be you working on your own to find the sources for this paper. And I'll show you how we'll do that. I'll cut in about 20 minutes and show you how to do that. But for this first part, you're going to write your actual thesis and outline. I'm going to give you feedback. I'm going to fill in the rubric. And at least how it went in 11 honors, and I'm expecting it'll be similar in here, the first score you get might not be the highest, and I want you to keep resubmitting until you get full points on this assignment, 15 out of 15. Okay, Noah, what was your question? Oh, okay, sounds good. All right, everybody else, you're getting started.
So, yeah, I just want to. Is it like? Because I got those sources.
But basically just got so whatever angle you really don't want to do this, then underneath that you're going to outline as though you were writing paper, like each section. So the same way that we do here when we write a thesis.
My dad,
It might be different. It might be okay. But Jonah, take your thesis and break it down. What is it? Oh, right. So make sure it's like.
Ground, rolling around, but there's some ground spots, so nobody can walk in on it.
But as an outsider, And so it just.
I was trying to think about myself.
So it's 43 points.
Like it's good.
56.
And then
You don't
I
really
jumped
know.
up, my foot slipped on. On the way down. Ground. I almost said not even.
No, well, you wouldn't.
Exactly, I changed it to punch.
Okay, oh, okay.
How did it be like take 5 classes? Baseball. Yeah. As someone who's personally dropped out of the house player.
Yes.
Okay, let's have it quiet in here so you get good work done. Yes, but don't write in it. Okay, so we're gonna work now. Wherever you are in this process, just pause for a minute. It's okay, you're gonna have the rest of class to work on it. But we're gonna work now on how you would go about adding sources to this. So we're almost thinking of this packet as like a big packet that AP could give you with all of the different sources that you could use on this paper. So I don't really want you to go outside of this packet for looking up sources. We're going to be working on that later, like how to research and how to find credible sources and all of that. For this paper, I really want you to work with kind of the limited sources that you have. But luckily, it is full of stuff that should be probably applicable to your argument. So I want to go and show you how we're going to start incorporating these. Let's look at, let's look at just the Thomas Jefferson to James Madison source, the one that says equality at the top. Yeah.
So does every like paragraph have to or can we do like 2 from here?
I don't really want you to pull from other sources at all. I only want you to come from the book or from your own reasoning. So we're kind of using the same format as we would for argument. So let me explain this part first and then I'll get into those details. So go to equality, Thomas Jefferson to James Madison. It's just at the very beginning, right? Page 11. Okay, got it. Okay, and then I'm going to give you the form that we're going to use for this. Actually, I'm gonna let you decide. You can either do this digitally or you can do it by hand. I am just not a computer person. I don't like switching between screens and stuff. So if you are like me and would rather do it by hand, come up and grab one of those later. But basically, we're going to practice the way that you could potentially integrate a source into your paragraph. So let's say I want to talk about at the very bottom of the page. There's a quote that says, "The property of this country, France, is absolutely centered in a very few hands." That's the quotation. It comes from Jefferson. Let's make sure we have our in-text citation. That's a direct quote, right? It's a little bit long and it's a little bit clunky, and you could use, when you are writing synthesis essays, you could just quote. It would be okay, especially this one is not that long. It'd be okay to just quote it. when you're getting sources and they say things just really well and you want to make sure that you're reflecting the way they say things, then it'd be okay to go ahead and quote. It might be a little bit better to paraphrase though. So paraphrasing is just where you take the quote and you put it in your own words. So I might say something like, the wealthy in France held all the wealth. No, the wealthy in France held all the wealth. Let's say owned all the property. Land. There we go. The wealthy in France owned all the land. Okay, that's great. I can paraphrase it and put it into my own words. And sometimes that's a better option than quoting. Here's the reason. When you are reading a book or a essay, and suddenly there's a big long block of quotes, that you are asking, like that writer is asking you to completely switch writing voices and to be able to understand what that person is saying in the quotation. How many of you guys, when you're reading an essay and there's a big block quote, you just skip it? I do. I never read it. Or like in my history textbook, suddenly there's a big block quote from like some primary source. I never read it. It's terrible, but I kind of just trust that after that blog post, the writer is going to tell me everything that was relevant anyway. A good writer will. And so the block quote is there to give them credibility, but it's not necessarily there as a good reading experience. And you want to create a good reading experience for the AP graders. They have like hundreds of these that they're looking through. You don't want them to skip parts of your essay, right? So paraphrasing can be better because you're not asking them to switch writing voices. You're just still, it goes with the flow of your writing. It's much more pleasant to read, but you lose out on some of the credibility when you do it this way. So we are going to practice a kind of integration. Yeah, you remember this from last year. That is quoting plus paraphrasing.
I'm okay with that. I just don't want to integrate.
Oh, sorry, I won't use that word. Synthesize. You're going to quote and paraphrase. So this is where you put part of it in your own words, but then you pull really short quotations from the original so that you're showing, hey, I am actually paying attention to what the source says, and I'm going to point out specific things about the source. So I may say something like property in France was concentred with a few wealthy people. So maybe it's just like that word, which I have never heard anyone else use, that I'm going to quote from him. I'm going to pull out something though that I think is going to be really important to the quotation. Like in that, I'm not going to quote like very. In that original quote, I'm not going to quote very because it's not like interesting to what I am trying to say, right? I'm going to choose a couple words that I think are really important. I could even say concentered with a few, no. Yeah, just quote A, yeah. There we go. I could quote property too if I wanted to. Property in France was considered of a few wealthy people.
Concentrated.
Either way, do you see quote, paraphrase, or the mixture of quoting and paraphrasing, I am still citing my source. So even if you're paraphrasing, this is really important because I feel like students don't know this. Even if you are paraphrasing, if you are pulling anything from a source, like any sort of information from an outside source, you still use in-text citations to say, I pulled this from a source. That's for your own benefit. Partly it's like, okay, I didn't plagiarize it, I didn't just take this stuff from nowhere, but it's also a way of saying I am using other sources, people who are more, are experts when I am not, to give myself credibility. Yeah.
I have a question for that, like when you do paraphrase, can you say like Jefferson, like when I was writing it, Jefferson said that the wealthy in France, do I still like say it that way, or
You definitely could. You could say Jefferson said
even if it's not direct?
that, yep, like that. And then because you've said Jefferson in the sentence, you don't need to say Jefferson in the in-text citation. And you could do that with this one. You could also do that with this one. Jefferson said, comma, and then the whole quotation. Yeah. It just depends on if you want to highlight the writer or not. In this case, Thomas Jefferson is kind of famous, so it might be a good idea. Yeah. Okay, so what I'm trying to get you to do is to take the quote that you might use in your paragraph just as a full quote, and instead of using it as a full quote, just choose a few phrases from that quote, but mostly paraphrase. And that will keep the flow of your writing going in a way that's way more pleasant to read. I'm trying to think if I need to say anything else about that. That's it. Oh, I would say probably no more than like 6 words in a row that you want to quote. Like that has like exceptions to it, but if you can only quote about 6 words in a row, it will help your readers along. What were you gonna say, Abby?
Oh, with do we only use quoting and paraphrasing?
Like moving forward, like out of this class, if you have sources that you are using for any kind of essay, use the quoting paraphrase method. It works so well. For this class, because you won't have sources available to you for the argument, you totally could still use it if you memorized some quotes for the argument, but it has to come out of your own head, so it won't be as applicable. But for rhetorical analysis, absolutely, this is a great way to do it for rhetorical analysis. Yeah. Okay. So I have a bunch of sources in this packet, and I don't want you to spend too much time like having to figure out what they're about to see if they're relevant. So I'm just going to list them up here. We've got the Singer's Solution to Poverty. This is not in order, by the way, sorry. And you remember that from our prompt. This is the guy that said anyone who has extra money should give it away. You've got Ben Franklin, who is talking about like the concept of a self-made man. So if any part of your essay is about like pulling yourself up by your bootstraps without government assistance or anything like that, Franklin might be a good place to go. Every Man a King is by Huey Long. It's basically, he's kind of like a Bernie Sanders type guy, but more extreme.
But he sounds kind of long.
Yeah, redistribution. Oh, he was totally involved in the mafia.
His name was the Kingfisher, and he got assassinated.
Yeah, but he's talking about like redistribution of wealth. So his idea was anybody who made 15 million after that, they don't need any more money. So tax them at 100% at that point. So if yours is anything about like wealth inequality, that could be a good one to look at. Roosevelt. His essay is about what unifies us in times of difficulty. That could be a good one. Ronald Reagan is talking about welfare and big government. So if part of your argument is about like social services or anything, you might look at what Reagan says. Lyndon Johnson's is also about welfare and big government, but his is taking the opposite side, which is saying we need it. So it's more about equity and government programs. Let's see. There's a Horatio Alger story in there, I think. Is Ragged Dick in there?
Yes.
Okay. That is an American Dream story. That is where people came up with that idea of pull yourself up by your bootstraps. That comes from Horatio Alger and his story. So that's a short story. There's an essay in there called Lifeboat Ethics that is kind of like an American first ideology about like not giving to the poor. And then there is one source that I have available for you that is not in your packets, but if you want to use it, it's called the New American Aristocracy. And it's another one about wealth distribution. Okay. I should have just put that up as I'm finished writing it. I just should have put that up on the projector. All right, so for this assignment, for the rest of the class, you are going to look at 4 of these sources. You do not need to read the whole source. Some of them are quite long. You're just going to look at them and you're going to decide, not the right one. You're going to decide if you could use what you could use in your American Dream essay. So you're going to look at these and you can use them to support your counter argument or to support your argument. You want to look at them with like a broad, sort of a broad perspective. You also don't have to use their central argument for your point. If you find one line that has something to do with your argument, you can quote from that one line. And that's a big skill when we're doing the synthesis essays. So you're going to look at 4 of these. And then in the chart, you're going to quote and paraphrase from at least one quote from the 4. Does that make sense?
Yes.
All right. If you want to do that by hand, raise your hand and I'll give you one of these.
Thank you.
It is also available as a digital file, though, if you'd rather fill this out digitally. There's one for them, there's one for.
I'll look at it. Like an outline.
Okay, 1 second, and I will answer your questions. All right, if you change your mind, they're up here. I gotta publish the campus assignment, you have access to it.
And then we're just working on this for first class.
Yeah. Okay, 1 second. If you refresh Canvas now, there is a new assignment under there called In-Class Assignment, American Dream Synthesis Sources. So if you want to do it digitally, that's how you would do it. Yes.
Oh, and we're basing it off of the outline.
Yes, and you're basing it off the outline that you just wrote. Did you submit it? What? Your new thesis? Oh, I see. Okay, that makes sense. That makes more sense. And then when you submit, I can give you more feedback. Yes. Yeah.
That actually.
It's good. Oh, I think it's going well. Keep doing this. And then when you're done with
Know
this,
what I did.
you're gonna look through this template and see what could apply to that. And for a lot of these sources, if you Google them, you might have versions in Spanish that help. And, but it doesn't mean you have to read the whole thing. Just read find a couple paragraphs. Yeah, but yeah, yeah. But for focus on this part. Okay, while you're working on this, I am back here responding to your thesis and outlines.